What is going on, YouTube universe? My name is Trent and welcome to the Hip and Shoulder, the channel where we discuss everything Australian rules football. And just like that, blink of an eye, week 1 of the 2024 AFL Final Series kicks off tonight in Adelaide. I almost forgot Thursday night football was a thing and anticipated doing this video tomorrow, but it's here today, so we're going to get it done. Before we get it done, however, time to reflect on the season that was, take a pause, and just thank everybody for getting on board the home and away tipping competition that I held this year. It was the first time that we broke away from my gaming channel and did it as its own entity. Didn't have as many players as we have had in the past, but I appreciate every single person getting on board this year, and I am hoping that we can make it an even bigger and better affair in 2025. I do want to mention the top 10 and the winner of this competition, but I also want to take the time to rattle off the names of every single player that got involved this year. So for the ones that finished outside of the top 10, I want to thank Mason's Limp Cox, Vincey Boy, Tritter H, Lucas I God 44, Rockstar Pool 69, Matt Lamb 24, Gramercy Riffs 78, Macca 0303, The Blooper Reel, Tony Chop Chop, Welsh Duke, NATO, and Durable Lamb 6. In 10th place overall, we have Pommy Tiger, who finished on 130 tips. We then have a 4-way tie for 6th place respectively, with Benny Craig, Maj Tig 77, Mikey is a Rat, and Saintly 12. In tied for 4th place, we have Frio 90 and Team Wiggles, both on 133. Tied for 2nd place, we have Dusty Fendoff 4 and Some Cripple on 134. And leading by 4 total tips on 138, Dan Cash, who every week after taking the lead in the competition would drop a comment saying that he didn't believe he was in front, that it would only be a matter of time before he dropped out. So congratulations to you for finishing on top of the ladder. I will reach out to you to organise your prize. I do also, and I will make mention now, have to reach out to Shannon from Team Wiggles, as well as Matt from Matt Lamb 24, to get their prizes to them respectively for past years. I apologise it's taken this long to get it done, but I will make sure this post-season U3 gets sorted and looked after. In the meantime, if you guys want to get on board another tipping competition just for the shits and giggles, I have opened up an AFLW tipping competition, which starts this weekend. AFLW started last week, but I set week 2 as the starting point of the competition, and I've done it as a public league, and we already have 20 people involved. So if you want to get involved, link will be in the description down below. As you can see on screen, the competition code is there. You just need to go to the AFLW tipping website as part of the AFL website. Just follow the hyperlinks and everything else. You know, I'll link it all down below. Just make it easier for you. Get on board. Let's have some fun. But the main point of today's video is turning our attention to the 4 games at hand. There were 18 teams at the start of the year vying for a final spot, and we are down to 8. And it kicks off tonight at Adelaide Oval with Port Adelaide taking on Geelong. Now, you don't have to look that far back. Well, maybe you do have to look that far back. Round 9 this year at GMHBA Stadium, Geelong played Port Adelaide in a game that fell the way of 1 goal to Port Adelaide, 95 being defeated by 101. This was a game where Tomahawk only kicked 1 goal, Jeremy Cameron only kicked 1 goal. It was off the back of Gary Rowan kicking 2, Tyson Stengel kicking 4, that really kept Geelong in the game. Whereas for Port Adelaide, they had a pretty even spread. They had Mitch Georgiades kick 2, Willie Rioli kicked 4, Kane Farrell kicked 2, Darcy Byrne-Jones kicked 2. Then you had the usual suspects popping up and kicking goals here and there. However, there were a few big names that went without kind of any influence for both sides here. We had Charlie Dixon, didn't score a goal, and he's kind of found a little bit more form at the back end of this year. Asava Radikalia, at the back end of the home and away season, moved to a forward role and has been hitting the scoreboard as well, giving him another avenue at goal. Jeremy Cameron finished the year with 9 goals, but, you know, he really came into his own in the back half of the year. This game, he only kicked the 1. You know, kept very quiet. Jeremy Finlayson only kicked 1. So this was a game where both teams were very quiet by certain standards, and it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. However, I'm going to go with Port Adelaide for the win in this game, purely based off of the momentum they take heading into this final series. When you have a look at how the teams have been performing collectively for the probably last 6 weeks heading into the finals, I think Port Adelaide have really recaptured a unseen aggression for the football that we didn't see in the first half of the year, and they've really turned their fortunes around. And this is a foothold that they need to take advantage of. Given that they get this home final, they beat Geelong, they walk into a prelim in Adelaide Oval. Pretty much sets up the opportunity for them to walk straight into a grand final. Similar circumstances when it comes to Sydney later on in the week. Sydney finishing in the first seed, home final. They win this one, home final in the prelim, and it sets them up as well. So finishing first and second really gives you a strong footholding in the competition. I just feel Port Adelaide are more primed around the ground collectively as well. When you look at the midfield battle, Port Adelaide are going to have Geelong dominated. When you look at the defensive structures, Tom Stewart is still an absolute beast in defence, don't get me wrong, but when you have a look at how Port Adelaide have started to structure things up, the only matchup I think that Port will struggle with a little bit is how they play Jeremy Cameron. If Jeremy Cameron can play further up the ground, get a lot of the ball, and be that linking player, do you send like an Alira to run around with him? Do you send an Asava Radicalia? I don't know whether they have the tank to run with Jeremy Cameron if he does that type of running. So that could be a player that can expose weakness of Port. And then you look at the forward lines, and you take Jeremy Cameron outside of that forward 50, and I think Geelong struggle a little bit. Whereas when you look at Port Adelaide, you've got a number of avenues that you can go to, and even though they've kind of lacked consistency, it only takes a little bit of momentum for them to get back on track. So I think collectively, Port Adelaide are more primed to win this game, and I'm expecting them to do so. Friday night sets up game of the round for me. We have the Bulldogs taking on Hawthorn at the MCG. If this was played at Marvel Stadium, this would have had the Bulldogs written all over it. The fact that it's being played at the MCG, I think, plays heavily into Hawthorn's hands. Even though there are many Hawthorn players that have never played a night game before, a lot of people are suggesting that's going to play factor. I don't understand how that very well could. It's just a time slot. I mean, I don't think the fact that the sun's gone down is going to, transform all the Hawthorn players into pumpkins. You know what I'm saying? So very much these two teams heading into this game are being touted as the two teams that are carrying the most momentum. When you look at Hawthorn's last 8 games, I think it is, I didn't realise this stat until I looked it up, and I think it's insane. Minus the loss they had to Geelong, and there was a close win in between, every win they have had for the last month and a half has been over 10 goals. That is absolutely insane. They go into this final series as arguably the best forward team and the best defensive team as well. It's mind-blowing to think this is a team that started the year 0-5 and head into finals as a dark horse threat that could really do some damage. If we take a reflection back to round 8 of the 2024 season, we had Hawthorn winning this game by 7 points, and it was played at Marvel Stadium, where it should have fallen into the hands of the Bulldogs. This was a game where Bontempelli had 26, he kicked 2 goals. Adam Treloar had 33, Bailey Dale picked up 29. They still were trying to find their feet in the way of how they were structuring themselves up. I mean, Nick Watson didn't hit the scoreboard, only had 3 disposals for the game. Kelshir Dia, I think, was the biggest goal scorer on the day. He kicked 2. I think Jack Gunston kicked 2 as well. Connor McDonald, kicked 3 on the day. That was the most for the Hawks. But since then, we have seen Hawthorn turn into a completely different beast. And this was a game that Hawthorn won while their season was still rocky and up and about. So this was round 8. So prior to this, they lost their first 5 games, and this was when they started to find their footing again. They're a completely different side now to what they were at this point in time. Now, that's not to say the Bulldogs aren't the same, because they've grown as well, but I definitely think everything is falling in the hands of Hawthorn here. And what makes Hawthorn the scariest threat out of all of these teams, they've already exceeded expectation. Nobody expected them to make finals this year. So their pass mark has already been achieved. They've got nothing to lose. They're playing just now off of momentum and the thrill of being a finals campaign team. When you've got nothing to lose and you throw everything at a game, that is when teams are at their most dangerous. And I can honestly see Hawthorn going as far as a prelim this year if things fall their way. I definitely think this game, they're going to have it wrapped up. Saturday sees the final 2 games go down, the first of which is a Battle of the Bridge rematch between Sydney and GWS. Both teams respectively winning 3 from their last 4 games. And the last time these 2 teams went head-to-head was also back in round 8. So reflecting on when these teams all played each other earlier in the year and trying to get a gauge of, how they performed at that point in time, this was still very much when Sydney were at their peak, and apart from losing that 1 game to Richmond earlier on, we were still trying to work out collectively when Sydney were going to drop the ball with their next loss. GWS, very much on the opposite side of the spectrum. They were in a period around this time where this is when they were struggling. They started off strong. This is when their drop-off started to happen. So I think it's a bit unfair to look back at this game and to use it as a measuring stick per se. I mean, we can look at the statistics all we want for this game. Sydney defeated GWS back in round 8 by 29 points at the SCG. Looking at performances on the day, Errol Goulden had 29, Chad Warner had 28, Isaac Heaney had 26. So the usual suspects for Sydney all standing up tall. Lockie Whitfield only had 19. This is a player who was averaging 30 odd disposals for most of the season after that fact. Toby Green didn't have much of the ball. Tom Green, I don't even see Tom Green. Tom Green was subbed out of this game. So this is when Tom Green had his injury. So he had 3 disposals for the game before doing himself a mischief. Joel Amadi only kicked the 1 goal from 4 disposals. A lot of underperformances in this game. So this Nick Blakey off of halfback only had 10 disposals. So it's going to be an interesting watch this game because both teams come into this completely fresh-faced when you look at it comparatively to when they played each other last. Now, when you have a look at the teams that they have played respectively in the last couple of weeks, you can get a better gauge, I think, of where they sit coming off of the wins they've had. We had Sydney's last 3. A 31-point win over Adelaide, 39-point win over Essendon, and the 3-point win over Collingwood. And prior to that, the 112-point smacking that Port Adelaide dished up that I feel was very much a wake-up call that Sydney needed to get their season back on track. And as I often say, is a loss that some teams do need come that kind of time of the season just to reconfigure themselves a little bit. GWS, their last 3 was a 37-point loss to the Bulldogs just last weekend gone, 9 points over Fremantle, and then 18 points over Brisbane. So when you look at the teams, and then a 2-point win over Hawthorn. So collectively, when you look at that, GWS, I feel, have played tougher opponents, and I think it's really set them up for a longer run at this. I'm actually going to go with a bit of an upset here, and I think Sydney are probably going to perform better overall in the long run, but I'm actually going to go with GWS to win this game and to advance onto a prelim and to make Sydney go the long route to the grand final. Big call, maybe, but that's just how I feel how it's going to go down. And the final game of week 1 finishes off with a rematch that opened the 2024 season. Opening round, Brisbane, Carlton, at the Gabba. We are back here again, and the last time these 2 teams played, Carlton walked away with a 1-point win. But very similar circumstances to Sydney versus GWS. I think it's very harsh to collectively look at this and judge this for what it is, because both of these teams now are in way different positions than what they were at that period of time. Brisbane were coming off of that huge pre-season scandal of Bris Vegas and everything going on, so mentally some players I don't think were checked into the start of the season. We've had a lot of injuries happen to Brisbane throughout the period. Carlton sustained injuries as well, but Brisbane copped a lot of their injuries early on. Carlton didn't even go into this game with Sam Walsh because he was still having back injuries, so it's hard to gauge where Carlton were at fully when Carlton weren't even fully fit at this period in time. So I don't think as well, I don't even think Doherty played, did he? No, Sam Doherty did play. He only had the 10 disposals. So, some players as well in this game not living up to the kind of their expectation, their moniker. I'm pretty sure, is this the game that he actually injured himself in? I think this is the game he did his knee, right? Because we had Kitty Coleman go down and do his, I'm pretty sure, don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure this is the game where Coleman and Doherty did their respective injuries that sat them out for most of the year. Big talk around Doherty coming back into this game. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't think you have a player who hasn't played any senior football at the level for 6 months come straight back into the team. I know you're trying to win an elimination final, but if he's not 100% fit and ready to go, and you're starting to throw players to the wolves that aren't fit to play, could be detrimental to you in the long run. I think the Bulldogs have taken the best look at this by saying that they're not going to play Bailey Smith, even though Bailey Smith is fit and ready to go. I think there's more conjecture around that given he's seeking a trade possibly to Geelong, so I don't know whether that's out of spite that he's not being played, but they're wanting to throw caution to the wind here, Carlton. They're wanting to throw their best team out there. If that means they're throwing a Sam Doherty out there who hasn't played football for 6 months, who knows? Does he play as a sub? Does he start on the field? I have no fucking idea. This is going to be a very interesting game. I think Brisbane are going to win this game in a tight contest. I think Brisbane's going to leave the door open for them slightly, but then they're going to slam it shut in the final term. These are two teams, I think Carlton come into this with the worst momentum, the least momentum out of everybody. Having lost their last 3 games, I think from the last 8 games of the year, they've only won 3 games, and those 3 wins came from West Coast, North Melbourne, and Richmond, the bottom 3 teams. Very much so in the position of being incredibly lucky they made finals, because Fremantle fumbling that loss to Port Adelaide kept Carlton in the hunt, and you could probably thank some wayward decisions earlier on in the season against certain teams that they maybe shouldn't have beaten but gotten some favouritism against that kept them in it. And it was the slight win against Richmond, it was the controversial win against Fremantle, things like that have kept them in the race here. They're coming up against Brisbane, who I still feel coming into the competition at this back end of the year is one of the most informed teams, and I still feel from this point, if I was to picture any team holding the cup comfortably, Brisbane for me is the team that's holding that cup. They've just found something about them in the second half of the season that has transformed their year around incredibly. They're defensively sound, they're offensively threatening, their midfield is potent. Not at all discrediting Carlton, but I think the injuries Carlton have sustained to the back end of the year means that if they do bring players back in, those players might be a little bit underdone, and you don't want to be serving up underdone players to a pack of Lions that are ready to rip meat off the bone. So I'm going with the Brisbane Lions to get it done at home and kick off their finals campaign by ending the campaign of the Blues. And that is it. Those are my tips. We're looking at Port Adelaide, Hawthorn, GWS and Brisbane to advance to the second week of finals, and respectively, obviously, Sydney and Geelong playing next week to keep their finals hopes alive. Again, a huge thank you to everybody who got involved with the tipping competition this year. Matt Lamb, Team Wiggles, Dan Cash, I will be inboxing you all individually in the coming weeks, so keep an eye open and, peeled for those inboxes. And again, if you want to get involved with the AFLW tipping, I know a lot of people don't follow AFLW. I'm still in the process of starting to get more heavily involved in watching AFLW and supporting. I support the Richmond girls because I am a very passionate Richmond supporter, but outside of that, I don't usually sit down and watch every game of AFLW over the weekend, but I found myself wanting to last week just to stay actively involved in the game. So if that's something you want to do just for a bit of fun, just to kill some time, do get on board. I will link that all in the description down below. Moving forward, as each week of the finals progresses, we are obviously going to have less teams playing, which means I can take deeper dives into each game. So if you want to see things like analysing individual teams' players and who I think are going to be the players that can pop off, who are going to be, you know, the bigger threats, let me know in the comments down below if that is something you would like to see. I'm currently in the process of doing a mock draft. I've already kind of nutted out the Richmond selections that I feel are going to go down, so it's just a matter now of piecing the other pieces together. I do have somebody who has been in the comments of recent videos asking to get involved, so I'm going to reach out to them and see if we can't get something together and going down. Trade period talk, draft period talk, it's all going to be happening. I'm going to hopefully bring a lot of post-season coverage just to bide time heading into 2025. I really want this channel to pop off and be a communal hub for people that just love AFL as much as I do. So if you do, hit that like button down below, hit subscribe and get on board while you can. It's going to be bigger, it's going to be better, it's going to be greater, and with your help, I think we can achieve all of those. But that's it from me, guys. I'm out of here. If your teams are still in the hunt for finals, good luck to you this weekend, and as always, I will catch you guys next time.